and welcome Rob, Chris, and Andrew. So Rob is a researcher, investor, writer, analyst, amateur philosopher. Rob's 30-plus year career spans in computer science, military and commercial aviation, investment banking, mortgage banking, business development, and volunteer board positions with venture philanthropy. He's a veteran affairs and investment banking organizations participant as well. And both Rob and his wife, Casey, co-founded XINNIX, a national leadership sales and executive strategy firm in 2002. Andrew is a co-founder and chief investment officer at ChainLink Capital, which has the second largest track record of all crypto funds managers since 2017, and was awarded as the #1 performing fund of funds for all of 2021 by Crypto Fund Research. A serial social entrepreneur, former government CIO, and NASA-trained planetary scientist. He is a former winner of the XINNIX Blockchain for Social Impact Hackathon, founder of the New York Government Blockchain Meetup, and has co-authored white papers advising national governments on the blockchain technology strategy. And Chris, our moderator today, is the senior partner of FAA Investments in Private Equity. FAA Investments is a private investment firm focusing on real estate, alternative investment managers, and early stage companies in both the US and Hong Kong. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicole, for that wonderful introduction. So I wanted to actually just add a little bit more to our panelists' description that you just provided. Those are excellent achievement, but I just wanted to say that Rob has been running the Academy of Excellence for almost 22 years now. So this is an amazing setup. If you have the chance, please do visit him in Atlanta, Georgia. We will be really fortunate if we can benefit from your training. And more importantly, just a bit about myself is that I was an early investor into Link2, and I'm also currently serving as an strategic advisor to the management team at Link2, and so is Rob. Rob is the advisory council member and also ambassador for the Apollo team group of people. So for those of you who are familiar with us, Apollo team is the smartest and also the biggest and also the most active group of our Link2 investors on our platform. So thank you for your leadership on that, Rob. And I also would like to mention that we should actually call Rob Commander.
Did we all freeze, or is it Chris? I thought.
I lost everyone. Sound.
But we're back.
We think we have great technology and no problems for the last 2 days or this morning, but here we go. When we try to do things and try to catch up, always. So Rob, having a situation such as this, how would a commander react? What should we do? I think Rob's frozen too.
Yep, sorry, the hotel Wi-Fi was a little bit unstable, but I got cut off. So can I keep going, Karim, or were you trying to connect?
No, I was just trying to talk about technology, but it looks like a bunch of people got cut off and froze and got dumped, but keep going, please.
Okay, yeah. So I was just, trying to finish my comments on Rob and also his wonderful bio. And obviously, after a successful mortgage banking career at Merrill Lynch, you were recruited to work at First Tennessee Bank, and then also you were recruited to work at Morgan Stanley, had a very successful mortgage banking career, and now you're learning, you are really teaching people how to be successful. So again, thank you for being with us, Rob, and also thank you for your leadership at the Team Apollo group. And Andrew is currently the Chief Investment Officer and founder of ChainLink Capital. So this is a fund of funds focusing on the crypto space. And you have been ranked, Andrew, as the #1 performing crypto fund of funds in the last year. So congratulations very much on that. And previously, Andrew was also the CIO. This is a Chief Information Officer, a different CIO for the New York State Senate. And then you were also a rocket scientist. And also, I think you have been very active internally and serving on the board for New Zealand nonprofit, the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, and have been serving on the board of Washington, D.C. based entities such as the Global Integrity, and also on the board of Cover US. So this is just what's on the bio. So as a quick introduction, I like to also ask Rob to kick into maybe just share with us a little bit more of your recent activities, and more importantly, I think something about your background that we did not quite mention officially on your bio, but will be good for the audience to know. And then after that, a quick introduction, I'll move to Andrew. And then after that, I like to dive into the first question that many of us have been dying to ask, which is how to demystify the DeFi space. But over to you first, Rob, to give a bit more background on yourself and also some of your recent activities.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's an honor to be here. Kareem, thank you to the entire Link2 family. I just feel at home from the minute that I discovered Link2 in early 2020. Since then, I've just been a voracious student, a learner, a researcher, an analyst. I feel blessed that, my entire, career, all the different parts and pieces of it, from management information systems to aviation to being an instructor pilot to working at Merrill Lynch to having a top secret military clearance to having a mortgage banking background and in a professional training organization. I'm fascinated with the world transforming possibilities of blockchain. And I know that most of us are so very, very early. Sometimes we have to remember, we're in that top 0.5% oftentimes of the world when it comes to our knowledge. And we're so far out there and dreaming and visioning what is going to happen to our world that it's hard for us to sometimes pull back and talk to the average person and say, this is happening and you're not aware of it, but you want to bring that awakening and bring that awareness to the common person, and that's oftentimes my challenge. So what I've been doing recently is writing, blogging, teaching in my local community. I'll hold classes. We'll have weekly, maybe sometimes twice a week conference calls that people are can voluntarily jump in. But I love to write. I love to teach. I love to research. And when I'm not working, I'm a avid Georgia Bulldog fan. I was a walk-on football player back in 1980 when we won our second national championship. And so I'm a little bit of a fanatic college football fan when I'm not being told how to live my life a little better by my two daughters and wife. So I have a blessed life, but that's a little bit about me. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent, excellent. I'm also a University of Georgia football fan as well, so we'll talk more about that. And Andrew, so please share with us some of your bio info that is not officially on the website, and also some of your recent activities.
Sure. Hey, and super honored to be here as well. So thank you. Yeah, it's the thing that I think is worth sharing additionally is just that it's weird that I'm a fund manager, because I'm actually a scientist and technologist, and never envisioned myself pushing money around, which is at the end of the day really what I'm doing. The reason I do it though is because I'm fascinated by this space, and I think these technologies are important for the future of our planet. And I happen not to be smart enough or in the right seat to actually build some of these technologies directly, but I think I can help direct capital flows to teams and technologies that will be important for the world, and build a good business doing that. So how I arrived at this surprising seat is that I spent a long career, decades literally, working exclusively on open source software. We didn't call them protocols at the time, but they're really open source software protocols. And using those protocols to collect, share, improve, and publish out data. And I did this primarily in the context of governments, right? So getting information out to more people, collecting information from people that can be useful to other people, I looked at as a basic good. And the technology building blocks to make that possible were, I felt deeply important to build. So I worked on that a lot in my life. However, I always did it with open source projects. And the reason for that was because I've looked at intellectual property basically as friction. And I would extend to that lack of transparency about who you're dependent on for getting information is also friction. And ultimately, I believe slows things down. So I've been a deep believer in open source and open data and open standards throughout my career. But one thing was always very hard, and I spent a lot of time banging my head against, frankly, as an entrepreneur, was how do we build a business model that actually enables that fundamental good that I believe deeply in to be realized in the world sustainably. And we were in a domain of having technologists basically donating their time to contribute to open protocols because they knew it was the right thing to do. And the downstream, they get some benefit back from it, but not really being able to be appropriately compensated for that. So we've got a handful of really great open source, fundamentally open source companies in Web 1 and Web 2. But a lot of things that should have happened didn't happen or lost out to proprietary alternatives. So I think blockchain technology turns that on its head by adding the transactional internet, essentially, and that we are now building the primitives to make open the standard for most transactions in the world across most industries. And that's what has me absolutely fascinated and excited and honored to have a chance to contribute to this space. So I'm happy to get into later, how we look at it from a cycle and stage perspective and investing and trading versus fundamental investing and all that. But I'm here because I believe in the technology, and I believe it's sort of the missing piece that we needed to have the world work in a way that I always, throughout my career, felt like it should work anyway.
Very good, Andrew. Thank you. In fact, being trained as a scientist, I think you're well, prepared to be a very successful investor. And some of the most successful investors I know are actually not trained as investment managers, but trained as scientists. So we'll get into that later. I wanted to connect with the point that Rob mentioned earlier, that I know many of us, especially you two, are so far out at the frontier of knowledge that you are not just in the top 0.5%, but I would say you're probably in the top 0.001% of the population. But I think, as Rob had mentioned, we have to bring it down to the everyday level. Perhaps, we can ask you guys to give us a bit of a kitchen table style description, or maybe just, pretend that I'm a layman and I am not really knowledgeable about the whole industry. We're trying to look at the evolution of this digital ecosystem. But how would you help me in demystifying the whole DeFi concept, and also to really turn this conversation to the kitchen table audience, and also get our sons and daughters and wives and spouses to really understand what we are doing here? Why is this important? Maybe I can start with Rob again and then come to Andrew. So Rob, help me out at this kitchen table discussion.
Well, thank you, Chris. I think in our prep discussion, we wanted to try to make this as meaningful as possible. So I put 3 slides together. Is it okay if I share my screen? And maybe a picture sometimes is worth 1,000 words. So
So let me just make sure that we have Nicole, who will enable your screen share. Yes, got it.
Okay, is that on the screen?
It is on. I can see it.
All right. So what I wanted to do is, what I think infatuates all of us that are in the know is the absolute promise of where we are now and where this transformational technology can take the world if we're good stewards of it. And so it's sometimes hard to not get technical and geek out and talk about all the different tangents and all the different types of digital assets. And when we're trying to just wake people up or answer the question, why? You know, what's in it for me? What's all this talk about crypto? Why am I scared of it? Who's trying to make me scared of it? Why is there all this FUD out there in the world? And really give me the first grade level, if you will. So, you know, what I wanted to do was kind of in a perspective. I've listened to Matthew Lemoore's talk yesterday, and it was so brilliant because it just, you know, it really helps us understand where are we now. The internet that we know that grew up, started in the 90s, maybe even a little earlier, was about data and communications. And where we're going now is so much bigger and so much more transformative for the entire world. Every industry and every person that is alive is going to be impacted for the rest of our lives. My kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids, we're going from, you know, a Model T data and communications architecture to data and communications. We're going to move value. Is that $10 quintillion? I mean, eventually it may take us 20 or 25 years to tokenize all things of value, from housing titles to cars to stocks to bonds to derivatives to mortgages to insurance products to jewelry, gaming, whatever it is. We're going to be tokenizing representations of value for the next 20 or 25 years. They're going to be able to be transportable point to point around the world without an intermediary on an almost instantaneous basis. So we're taking an old architecture, we're adding value, we're adding identity and credentials, we're adding trust. We can talk about that for 2 days. We're adding transparency, soundness. If we were to just put soundness of currency versus fiat currency on a system like this, where it's absolutely provable and mathematical, and there was no funny business that could take place with world currencies or world reserve currencies, or is the currency backed or is it not backed? Is it being floated by a bankrupt country or a solvent company? Accountability, that means person to person, government to citizen, business to business, nation to nation. We have to have actual accountability and not just take my word for it. So security, low cost, and sovereignty. Each nation ought to be able to run their own budgets and run their own currencies and be accountable to their people, instead of there being a third-party NGO, unaccountable regulator, you know, without representation, taxation or regulation without representation. If that accountability string is cut, we're really in a vulnerable situation as citizens and as nations and as investors. So, you know, really what we're trying to do here is, when you understand we're going from an old world where 1 + 1, I put equals 1.75. You know, there's an intermediary level of trust. There's a centralization factor. There's a banker, there's a fee, there's a broker, there's a little clipping of the coin, there's a little bit of unsoundness, there's a little bit of debasement of the currency, or maybe we're printing more than we really have collateral for. That intermediary process, someone is taking that 0.25 and it's polluting or diluting the value of what I have and what I'd like to transfer. We're going to a world where 1 + 1 is going to be very, very close to 2. Very, very close to 2. And that is, it's transformative to our world, because my rights and my properties and my titles should be mine and not a deception of what's actually my property. So to finish this up, what we're really doing and what this technology promises the world is the single greatest transition that I think our world is going through is from centralized to decentralized. Decentralization is more important than going from the agriculture to the industrial revolution, or going into the steam engine and the railroads, or going to the telecommunications that gave us centralized supercomputers with all of its vulnerability. We're also going to hopefully go from unsound to sound collateral, where we have absolute identity, absolute trust, absolute title, absolute ownership, and sovereign control over that property that we own. And then we're going to go from a world that's very exploitable, that's got single points of failure, single points of accounting, single points of, ledgering, one person writing down how many times a bond was sold, or who owns that stock, or have I over collateralized the gold and the silver in the futures market? I mean, what is the ledger? And is it exploitable for people that, we're all vulnerable to, personal greed or mistakes or ulterior motives. But when we can go from exploitable to mathematical, math is perfect. Math has either got a right answer or a wrong answer. And when that can be added onto a blockchain with perfect accountability and security and immutability, that changes that 1 + 1 = 1.75 to 1 + 1 = 2. And it changes the world. So that in a nutshell, I want to just put a really big 30,000-foot picture out there for a person that's never even heard anything about blockchain or Ripple or XRP or DLT, to understand why this industry is almost missional. It's in our DNA, and we understand the promise that it can bring to the world. And we all, whether we're in marketing or engineering or selling or business development or whatever it is that we're doing, we all have that sense of a much greater purpose for what this industry can bring to the world. So hope that
was wonderful, Rob. I mean, I'm going to take that 1.99 concept back to my kitchen table tonight and share with my wife and kids. So Andrew, can I ask you to just chime in and add to that also in terms of just demystifying the whole DeFi concept, right? And then after that, I'd like to just pick on what Rob mentioned earlier about the leveling playing field sort of like a topic. So, but before that, Andrew, anything else to add?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's so well put. I'm going to steal some of those good ways of framing things too, Chris. So DeFi for me, just to make it really break it down, is basically a decentralized way of doing the things that we do with financial institutional counterparties in our lives that are centralized. So custody, like I put dollars in a bank account traditionally, not under my mattress. Right, that's essentially custody of my fiat currency asset. Lending and borrowing, earning interest on those dollars, getting some more dollars, perhaps from a mortgage agent to buy a house. Getting insurance, so that if my house burns down, somebody can, a pool of people that have contributed to an insurance policy can help me pay to rebuild my house, right? So those are very basic fundamental things. As Chris said, we basically put in a dollar into those, and we get some value out of those things, but we're paying along the way, typically to a third party who is a centralized, for-profit entity, and that's all well and good. I'm a believer in capitalism, but it can be done better, and it can be done in a way that's more empowering to us. And so the way I think of DeFi is all this, very important functions that I just described: custody, insurance, lending, borrowing, being able to essentially be those institutions ourselves collectively, communally, by using decentralized finance protocols. So when a bit of money is made for the service of providing insurance, lending, borrowing, or custody, being able to participate in that profit share. So profits in a decentralized network accrue to the network. We're basically co-op owners now of those financial services. We're both beneficiaries, customers. We're also owners in a sense. And to me, that's the most fundamental thing. Now, not only is that cool that I could potentially participate in the profit side, it also, as Rob said, is potentially more profitable, right? We can actually do these things more efficiently because we are able to take advantage of code to do things that have, in a traditional, more centralized way, require layers of auditors and oversight and legal contracts and other things that cost money, right? So these businesses that make a lot of profits from our financial services not only make a lot of profits, they also spend a lot of money to provide those services. And I believe that by doing things in code, open code, you can get more efficient so that we have to pay less for the same value that we get out, or we can get more profit share as part of participating in that collaborative value network. So that's what's really exciting about DeFi to me. In addition, because there's a whole lot of policies that go along with providing these services that are not just from regulators, but also from boards of these institutions, we now, in a decentralized context, have the ability to participate in that governance. So to make judgment calls and to be able to evaluate risk and through voting mechanisms, essentially have a voice in this institution that we're now a peer within in a decentralized financial network. That all together, I believe, makes this more resilient, meaning there are fewer single points of failure, as Rob said, and there's fewer too big to fail scenarios in the future. I think we'll be able to build a more resilient world of financial services when we have it less centralized fundamentally, which is good for all of us. And then finally, and I think we'll get to this more in a little bit, and fundamentally for me, I believe these decentralized approaches are inherently more equally accessible, meaning I think that if you are closer to the centers of financial and economic political power, you get disproportionately benefit from these traditional centralized ways of providing these financial services. And so for people who have a difficult time titling their assets that they might want to borrow against, Hernando de Soto is famously quoted as saying that there's $1 trillion of untitled assets in Latin America at a minimum. If you're somebody who doesn't have a good credit score because you aren't part of the systems or haven't thrived in the systems that we've developed to assess credit and credit risk, you may be shut out of borrowing in a traditional system, but you may in fact be incredibly reliable borrower if we could measure that objectively, transparently, and efficiently in a different way. And on and on. Basically, we can rewrite the rules in ways that actually make the world work better for more people when we do these kinds of functions in a decentralized way. So, and again, that's why I'm in it. I believe that these technologies can in fact make the world work better for more people.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew. Yeah, it was wonderful to have that additional description from both you and Rob. And staying at the 30,000 feet level, and since both of you have very, very strong government background, so I'd like to just raise this question in terms of, is the government actually helping in terms of leveling the playing field for small investors like myself, my cousins, and my uncle? So does the government actually help in leveling the playing field? So maybe we can start with Rob again and then move over to Andrew. So which side of the debate are you on, Rob?
Well, I think we've all heard the joke and the punchline that, you know, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Does it actually materialize quite often in the real world? You know, there's an inherent conflict of interest. First of all, the speed of technology and the blockchain and instantaneous settlement and moving money in 3 seconds. I mean, bankers traditionally, nor our government, are not good software engineers. They're not nimble, they're not fast, they're not responsive. There's high friction and a whole lot of ulterior motives and reasons for, you know, there's a political currency, and then there's an economic currency, and then there's an efficiency of an engineering process, and the whole, by design, the government is intended to move very slowly. The wheels of the laws and everything is debate, and it's supposed to go slow. And here we're an industry trying to return and restore sovereignty in the hands of the individual, where we can take responsibility for our money, our wallets, our value, our property. We can own things. We can choose to have an intermediary or not. But the problem that's inherent in this structure is the conflict of interest as to how politicians get elected, where their money comes from, and the disruption that this industry is providing to the banking sector. This is the decentralization is going to gore the ox called the bank. And the bankers print the money, make the money, issue the money, and fund the politicians. And so, unfortunately, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase and all the other big, global players, their voice is much more loud and much more responded to than the moms and dads at the kitchen table. And unfortunately, that's just the way it works. So if we're going to break away from that super centralized outsource influence of bankers over the political process, we have to realize that, we probably need a few more politicians involved in the equation than 75 and 85-year-olds that have been in the system for a very, very, very long time and who are incredibly hesitant towards adopting this level of change that our society and our culture really needs.
Right, I see. So, Andrew, I mean, you were with the New York State Senate, and do you agree with that statement, or you have a slightly different view?
I believe there are tremendous conflict of interest risks in government on the part of regulators. There's abject corruption sometimes also, sure. However, I have a pretty nuanced view on it. I believe regulation is fundamental and necessary and ultimately can be enabling and empowering, including for a disruptive industry such as we're building. Mm-hmm. And I say that in part because while there's a lot of influence of money in politics, obviously, and that's why there are conflicts of interest and also corruption. But ironically, why do we have such a bad situation with that right now? I think it's because we don't have enough regulation, right? In the sense, the Supreme Court and Citizens United basically, made unlimited campaign contributions legal in this country. And so they basically removed regulatory constraints on undue influence of money in politics. And so now, ironically, we have more influence of regulators by money because we have less regulation. So my point is not that, to argue the finer points of more regulation or less regulation, but more to say it's actually complicated. It's actually nuanced. And so I think it's our responsibility to engage and educate and have really eyes wide open, and humble debates, bringing our views to government and to other advocates and influencers of governments. I also think that as a practical matter, we need good regulation because you could be the most sort of principles-based, authentic libertarian, and I don't believe we're going to see real, true transformative change and mass adoption of these technologies and these new business practices for especially decentralized finance without regulators being a partner in that. In other words, I don't think it's going to be, completely out with the old and in with the new. I think as a practical matter, it'll be an evolution that will involve partnership with regulators to get there in a healthy way.
I see. Yeah.
Can I comment on that real quick, Chris? Andrew, I think we're exactly on the same page here. I think what's important definitionally is to understand, the one side of the coin is regulation, and the other side of the coin is manipulation. It depends on who is in the driver's seat and who gets to call their behavior regulatory and who gets to call it manipulation, right? And so I'm 100% for regulation, but here's the nice thing. Once we have regulation and it's settled, if they would just come out and give it to us, we can code the regulation into the code. Then the source code cannot be changed. It's transparent. Everyone can see it, and it removes the manipulation aspect out of the regulation. Regulation that's pure and verifiable and transparent and coded and can't be changed on the source code unless you go through the regulatory process. And everyone can see that Everyone is treated the same. There aren't two sets of justice. There aren't two sets of regulations. There's not the special off the books manipulation regulation for the big boys. And then the cartoon meme that's going around right now is we can't see anything going on in Ukraine. We can't see anything going on in Bahamas. We can't see what's happening with BitBoy. But damn, the megaphone comes out if you spend $601 in PayPal. If we transfer more than that, we got to record that transaction, $601. So the application of regulations and transparency, that's where the fungus is. I'm 100%. We're a nation of laws, and everyone should have regulation and have regulatory clarity, and it should be transparent to the world that everyone is in compliance. But we've got to take that human element, that subjective, emotional manipulation aspect out of the regulation, which we can do with open source, right?
Yeah. Well, this
100%. I couldn't agree more. Yep.
Great topic for further debate. And again, just to pick up on the whole regulatory landscape in terms of SEC, and also their mission is supposed to really help and protect the investors, right? But clearly there has been quite a bit of news coming out recently regarding both FTX or maybe XRP, the Ripple class action lawsuit case. So 70,000 people actually, are not happy with the SEC. So maybe I can ask Rob and also Andrew to just make a prediction, right, in terms of what do you expect this to sort of like be ending up. So just a prediction, wild guess, and then I think our audience will be happy to hear that too. And then after that, I probably will need to ask you guys to make a closing comment. But on the regulatory and also the SEC piece, please let us know your prediction. Yeah, maybe we'll go with Rob again. Mm-hmm.
Well, in a perfect world, I would like to just pitch a shutout, and win 50-0. But life is political. The problem here is that the law, the facts, the transparency, everything, without a shadow of a doubt, is on Ripple's side. What they've done, their openness, their transparency, the fact that they were in and out every day or every week or every month for 6 years with the regulators, and everybody's buddy. No one in the world views Ripple as anything other outside the United States, views Ripple as anything other than a currency. The world is being stitched together. 90% plus of the foreign exchange markets are connected with the XRP ledger and RippleNet. I mean, the fact that we're being slow walked and giving a second set of standards is prima facie evidence of political corruption and conflict of interest. There's still, to this day, there are no regulations. Nothing's clear other than what they were trying to negotiate with Sam Bankman-Fried at the CFTC and the SEC. So case in point, regulation is important, but the incumbents right now don't want clear regulation, because once that clear regulation is put in ink, they get their asses kicked and they don't want to lose. So they're leaving it completely wide open, and regulation by enforcement isn't just another name for corruption. That's all it is. And until we can get regulation, I do believe that Ripple is going to win this suit. There's zero doubt whatsoever. I mean, I equate it to when the yellow cab medallions had to give way to Uber. Once Uber's gotten out and once people like it and once people have experienced it, there's no way in hell's half acre the government can take Uber back away from the people. And I think we've hit the Uber stage with Ripple. They may fine them. They may charge them, I don't know, $25 million, $100 million. I don't know what they might charge them. But I do believe that this is going to go in the favor. And it's not, will Ripple win? In my view, it's will the world win? Will the world beat the incumbent status quo centralized bankers, or will we break that lock and go into decentralization? And I think this will be a win for all of mankind, not just one company.
That's great. Yeah, we have a great feedback from our audience. Lonnie and Patricia both, I think, have put in some nice comments. So, Andrew, do you agree with that prediction as well, that Ripple will beat the SEC? What's your view?
I don't like to make predictions because I have a very, very good track record of being wrong on a lot of things. Instead, I look for below the surface of the specific event or the specific outcome, which is kind of binary, like win or lose on the surface, to really the underlying impact of the whole process, from the lawsuit to the discovery to the result, and all of our sort of mutual education about the fundamental issues and our advocacy for what we believe. I think all that matters, win or lose, because I 100% agree that regulation through enforcement is with very few exceptions not the right way to go. That code is law, as we like to say in this industry, and that by having open code, you can have transparency, even if you disagree tremendously with the law that isn't encoded. Then if you at least know what it is, you can then advocate for its change, and that can be done in a number of ways. And as long as the advocacy is also done transparently, it's a healthy thing, even when we disagree. And then also, just like history is short these days, and especially with this technology, right? You can have a court precedent, you can have an election outcome, you can have an appointee of a different regulator that makes you forget what happened last week, quite quickly. So I think, again, I would encourage people to look at, these are sort of punctuated events which make headlines, and they matter. But also, I think really we want to look at the underlying movement, which is quite rapid in my view, in the direction of openness, and transparency in ways that will serve all of us well, including regulators. Frankly, I think we can make regulators' jobs easier when code is law. And I've been involved in efforts in New Zealand, for example, as you mentioned at the outset, and something called better rules, or basically making regulations not the specific prescriptive regulation, but more like a set of rules, and then data goes in and affects the specifics of what the rules say. But that data changes and evolves, so the rule can evolve and be updated and made better based on the feedback loop that data and then impacts create. So I think there are better ways to do regulation, win or lose, but it certainly shouldn't be through enforcement.
Got you. Yeah, got you. Thank you both. And so I know that our time is almost coming to an end, but I think to summarize, I mean, this is evolution of the ecosystem, right? So perhaps, Rob and Andrew can just have some parting comments, some final thoughts before we hand it back to Karim, and feel free to also share with us what are some of the lessons that you think we learned from the FTX incident. So some of the key takeaways from today's session, Rob and then Andrew.
Well, I'm blessed to be a part of this community, and thank you, Chris and Karim, for having me, and Andrew, thank you for your brilliance on this subject. I feel I'm blessed to be alive at this point in history. I don't think when the history books are written in 1,000 years and people look backwards, I mean, this is going to be one of the most transformative periods of time in human history. How we're going to return sovereignty, or if you will, unalienable rights back to the individual. We're going to decentralize control and title and ownership and property and wealth and securities down to the lowest common denominator, which should be the individual, right? It should be codified in my digital wallet instead of someone else assigning a value and holding custody and printing the currency and then deciding, oh, we need a bail-in. You thought it was your money, but it's not your money. It's our money. We're going to take it back from. No, that's not the way the world should operate. So we're really going through one of the most healthy transformational periods, I believe, in recorded human history. And I'm so excited to have a front row seat to be a part of it and to be engaged in it and to understand it and see it. So many people are just completely asleep. They do not understand. And we can almost look at the world. It seems like the whole world's on fire. It reminds me of that Leslie Nielsen movie, where nothing to see here and everything in the world's, on fire and blowing up and there's chaos everywhere. But we have to ask ourselves, why? Why is there so much fear? Why is there so much chaos? Why is there so much, breaking down of NGOs and banks and centralization? And why are the traditional norms seeming to be falling apart? And why has there been the level of corruption that I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime? In 2 years, I've seen more than I've seen in 58. It seems to me. It's just right here in our face. And we have to ask ourselves, there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a why. And it just so happens to be merging at the very same time we're entering this brand new world of decentralization. There's a lot of people that just don't want to let go of the status quo. And I think, if we were to, the old adage, follow the money and you can kind of find the motive, I think we can see maybe those that have had power for a very long time are very hesitant to let go, but they can't stop technology. Technology is going full speed. It's a physics, it's a law of nature. It can't be stopped. They can try it. They can throw the kitchen sink at it, but the collective human nature of 8 billion people is much more powerful than 1 million regulators that are trying to tell the world what to do. So I'm just excited to be here and be a part of the revolution. Yeah.
Thank you. And final thoughts and final takeaways from you, Andrew?
Yeah, just two big things. One, we're still super early. Maybe that's not shocking, but I felt like I was late when I got heavily involved in 2017. And in fact, I was late compared to a lot of folks, but beyond censorship resistant digital money, Bitcoin, the seminal use case we were all talking about that I was super excited about was titling of real property assets on blockchain. We're only today hearing from John and Prosper Home on the prior panel about how that is finally becoming truly possible. So, it's still early. I look at DeFi as building the funding, basically the building of the primitives for all of these exciting things that we've been talking about today, and that Rob has in particular been so eloquent about. So I'm grateful for DeFi, including even for all its failures, for helping us build the primitives for this future world that works better for more people that we all want to create, because it will make all these other use cases possible. I'm excited about that. And then related to FTX, and also just what do we do? What can we all do as individuals besides, invest and learn? I think there are big silver linings from FTX. I think that it is going to drive more transactions from CeFi, which FTX really was a centralized financial institution, to DeFi, because you don't have the same counterparty risk. You have a trustless system in DeFi that in a way you never will in CeFi. And I think it will, if we engage properly with regulators and elected officials of both parties, force more nuanced regulation at the end of the day. I think CeFi should be regulated, and should be regulated differently than DeFi, which should also have a regulatory framework that is transparent and auditable and equitable. So it's a call to engage, not oppose from me. And I think that really goes across the board with governments across both parties in this country and also other countries as well. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that we as constituents can do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew Hoffman from ChainLink Capital. Cunningham from the Academy of Excellence, zooming in from Atlanta, Georgia. So thank you very much, gentlemen. And Karim, I will hand the floor back to you.
Chris, we're going to put you on the spot a little bit. Your takeaways and summary of this conversation.
I am just so happy to be here, because this is just the best day of my life in terms of a full day of learning and also conversing with all these experts. And I would encourage my family members and friends to jump in next time at your next GIC. So we're all signing up.
Thank you so much. So I got to say, Rob, thank you so much for the clarity that you provided, the clarity and vision that you're fighting for and pushing forward with. Thank you for that. Andrew, you must have read our tagline, which is engage, educate, and empower. It's a tagline that we formulated a little while ago that we use on the Link to Learn and GIC, and that's the tenets and principles that we're doing here, as well as Link to ensure that everyone's engaged, being educated, and empowering us for the next steps. Thank you all. Thank you, Chris, for the excellent moderation. Andrew, your participation Rob, your clarity and participation, and a great supporter of Link2. So thank you so much